Welcome to Blue Iron IP's Patent Myth podcast. I'm Russ Krajak, your host, and the author of Investing in Patents, as well as a soon-to-be-released book called Startup IP Strategy. Blue Iron provides financing for patents, so we look at startup companies and their assets, the patent assets, as having value and trying to figure out how do we create value with those assets. Our view is that 95% of all the patents out there are worthless, and the percentage might even be higher for startup companies. Our aim is to take down some of those existing patent myths and put in better practices so that startups could do a much better job with their IP. In this episode, we're going to look at the myth of provisional patent applications and why they are always wrong for a startup company. Hi, I'm going to talk about provisional patent applications and explain why I hate them so much, but really explain why startup companies should never do provisional patent applications. I know that the common advice is, go get a provisional. And even the patent office itself says that provisionals are good for startup companies or for independent inventors or whatever. The patent office pitches them as, quote, low cost because the filing fees are, quote, lower. The truth is you pay more in filing fees if you do a provisional because you have to do the provisional filing fee plus you have to do the regular filing fee. You have to pay that anyway. So the patent office actually makes money on these. The attorneys seem to push them. In the startup community, it's just common practice to go get a provisional patent application. And I do not think there is a single business reason why you should get a provisional as opposed to a non-provisional. In every single case, you should file a non-provisional patent application. And I'll go through a bunch of different arguments on this. So the background of a provisional patent application. This was a requirement for compliance with PCT, in that the PCT required that the maximum length of a patent be 20 years. And so in the US, we created this fiction called a provisional patent application. And then sometimes you've heard of people talking about converting a provisional patent application to a non-provisional patent application. And this process of conversion, whatever that term is, that term is really about making it into this application that gets examined. And the net effect of that is that the patent that grants from that non-provisional can last 20 years. So if I do a provisional, I wait a year, then file a non-provisional, I actually get a patent that extends from year 20 to 21. I essentially get 21 years of protection by filing a provisional, then a non-provisional. And I mean, that sounds really good, but who what scenario works for that? And who is interested in doing that kind of thing? Well, it's Big Pharma. For their blockbuster drugs, Big Pharma makes all their money at the very tail end of the patent. And so having an extra year is, could be worth billions for them. Big Pharma might be making $1 million a day on their patented drugs. And once it comes off patent, well then all the generics flood the market and erode their market share and their pricing. So big pharma, that business model, yes, provisionals are absolutely, key. You got to do them. For startup companies, we're not worried about year 21. We're worried about year 2. We need to keep the lights on. We need to add value to the company as fast as humanly possible so that we can either raise money or get to profitability before we run out of cash. The startup company's most valuable asset is time. And the longer that they have to longer it takes them to get to profitability, the more cash it's going to cost and the more risk they have. The faster that they can get to profitability, the better. And until that happens, they represent a ton of risk. But the faster they get a patent, if they should even bother getting a patent, the faster they get a patent, the faster they can license it. The faster that I will do a loan against that patent, the faster that they can raise money again, add value to the company and raise money against it. The faster they can enter into a joint venture or a cross-license relationship, or any of the hundreds of uses of patents. The life is better if they had issued patents, not pending patents. So why would you wait? Why would you wait a year and then, delay getting that patent? It's the most important year of the life of the startup. So that part I don't understand. I even see some patent attorneys talk their, for whatever reason, they do a provisional patent application. The company sits around for a year, and then the attorney talks them into doing something like expediting the patent. So they wait a year. They don't do anything for a year. And then they're paying extra money to get the patent fast. Like, why don't you just file that earlier? Save yourself provisional filing fee, pay the non-provisional and get it examined. Like, why did you do that? It only cost you extra money instead of lowering the cost. The one thing about provisional patent applications is, they're touted as cheap, they're touted as low cost, they're touted as startup friendly, which they are not. But there's this notion that the provisional patent application is the ugly stepchild of a non-provisional, and it's treated with disrespect in that, it's just a provisional. I don't really have to think about it. I don't have to put a lot of energy into it. And nothing is further from the truth. That is a huge mistake. A patent application is a patent application. And it doesn't matter if you happen to check the box that says provisional or check the box that says non-provisional. It's still a patent application. And every requirement of a patent application has to be met in both cases. A patent application, the basic requirement of a patent application is that I need to be able to take the description and the figures and hand it to somebody of ordinary skill in the art and have them practice the invention. So I have a mechanical invention. I need to be able to take that entire patent application, the description, the figures and all that, and hand it to a machinist. And they need to be able to look at it and figure it out and build one. And it needs to work. If I have a software application, I need to be able to take the entire document and hand it to a programmer. If it's some kind of chemistry, biological, device or whatever, or process, I need it to hand it to somebody of average skill in that field. A lot of times the inventors are, they're by definition extraordinary in their field. They're at the cutting edge, and they tend to be way, way, way smarter than the average person. And so they'll either write their own patent application or they'll look at one. And for them, a lot of stuff is implied. It's just, oh yeah, I know how to do that. So I'll just, for them, what's in the patent application might be shorthand that they understand that, an average person, an average machinist, an average programmer may not fully grasp because they don't have that same experience set. So, that level of description has to be in the patent application. And if it's not in that patent application, that's basically the first sin that you can do, which is the sin of omission, the sin of leaving something out of a patent application, be it a provisional or a non-provisional. The net result of that is that you get zero protection. One of the things I wanted to mention was that a patent has two pieces. Okay, there's a piece that you give away. There's a piece that you give to the public, that you give to your competitors. And there's a piece that you get back. And the point of the patent system is to get as much technology into the open so that future people, future competitors can improve on it. If we know the inner workings of this device and it's in a patent application, well, I can look at it and I go, oh, I know how that works. Now I can build a better one and compete with them. What you give away is the description. What you get in return are the claims, and the claims are the metes and bounds of the sandbox that you get to charge rent for. You get to keep people out of that little sandbox. And sometimes, they'll want to play in that sandbox, and you can charge them a license fees. And sometimes they'll look at it and they'll design around it. They'll go around somehow. And that's the point. What you get out of the patent application are the claims. So what we give away is the description. What we get in return are the claims. And a lot of people make the sin of commission when it comes to patents, or when it comes to provisionals, where they add a lot of stuff to the patent application, but they get nothing in return. And the sin of commission is where we put a whole ton of inventions into this patent application. And yes, we can go back in theory and pull out those little inventions and put them in the claims and get them examined and get them allowed. In theory, in practice, what usually happens is that inventions go into a provisional kind of as a placeholder, a reminder of, hey, we can do this. Hey, this would be a cool feature. Hey, I see this is a use case for it. But that stuff's never developed and explained well enough that I can hand it to an average practitioner and have them, build out that product. And I'll give you an example. I looked at a patent application, or it actually was an issued patent for a company several months ago, and they filed a patent application on this core technology. It was a really core it was a telecom invention, and this technique that they had developed and this mechanism enabled a whole ton of really cool features that could be built. Stuff for call centers, stuff for, they had all kinds of really interesting use cases for this. And the patent application and the part that was granted was for this basic communications mechanism. But at the very end of the patent, they listed 32 different features that could be built on top of this. It could be used in this scenario, it could be used for that scenario, it could be used for this type of communication, that type of communication. And each one of those 32 paragraphs was about one sentence long and said, oh, you could use it you could use it here, you could use it here, you could use it here, but it never explained anything more than that. And what's the net effect of that? Well, the net effect is that they gave up all those features, but they got nothing in return. They gave up their entire, all their brainstorming, all their product roadmap, all the industries they wanted to get into. All that stuff was laid out bare for anyone to see, but they got nothing in return. And I'm looking at it and thinking, well, how do I deal with this? What if we were to take over financing that patent? Would this be a good opportunity for us? And what we would have to do is keep that patent pending. We keep doing continuations, but we would have to do a continuation in part and take one of those 32 ideas. We'd have to explain it. Say we did 10 pages of description, a few figures of how that one thing worked, and then we file it as a patent application. But we'd have to claim priority back to that very first one. And then we'd have to do that again 32 times for each one of those different use cases. The problem is that I'm going to do that 32 times. Okay, that's really expensive, takes a long time. And if I do them in sequence, I might be 10, 15 years down the road still doing continuations on this thing, but they all claim priority back to that first one. Well, I'm not allowed to get a patent that extends past 20 years. So I'm using up all my patent term. I'm going to wind up with a patent that issues that only has 5 years of term left, because I have to claim back to this first one. And this happens quite frequently, where that initial patent application that a startup has way too much garbage in it, and that garbage turns into prior art later on. It turns into prior art that hurts us, that hurts the startup company down the road. And I've seen it happen multiple times. And I think I'll have another podcast that talks about this with another example that was, where we learned the difference between Chapter 11 and Chapter 7 bankruptcy because of this problem. It is actually serious. But the point is that provisional patent applications, for a startup never make sense. Either do a really good job of writing a patent application or never file it. Okay? Don't do this half-baked provisional thing where you just, you treat it awful. It does become public record, and it will come back and haunt you. If you're going to do a patent application, just file it as a non-provisional. And if it's not good enough to file it as a non-provisional, you should never file it at all. If it is good enough to file as a non-provisional, well, think about your messaging, the messaging of an entrepreneur to an investor. The entrepreneur is saying, hey, look at my business model. Please invest. Oh, by the way, I have a patent application. And, they use that patent application as, hey, there's value here, and I want you to put money in my company. What the entrepreneur is saying with their actions is that, hey, I got to the patent office and I had the option to check the box between provisional or non-provisional, and I checked the provisional box. And the cost difference between provisional and non-provisional is about $650. That's for a small entity. So what the entrepreneur is saying is that they did not believe that this patent application was even worth $650. They were not. They who they are the people who are the most knowledgeable about that patent application. They know it inside and out. They've reviewed it. They send it. They were the ones that signed the documents and said they were first and true inventor and all that. They looked at it and said it wasn't even worth $650. But they're out trying to convince an investor to give them, however many hundreds of thousands or millions to invest in their business. So it's a really disingenuous argument there. A lot of people talk about the money issue. I'm trying to save money, so I'm going to do provisionals. And I have two responses to that. One is, if it's not a good investment for your company, do not make it. If money is better spent doing sales and marketing or building prototypes or building inventory or whatever, that's a better use of funds. Okay? Doing a cheap patent application, it'll wind up with 95% of all the patents out there that are completely worthless. In fact, most patents out there, they're worthless in the sense that the claims, what they got back, was worth a lot less than what they gave away. And so most patents are a negative value to the company. They give away so many trade secrets, but there's nothing in return for them. If you're going to do the time, just do it right and spend the money and do it really well. I actually finance patents for startups, but my mantra is that I don't want to finance the first patent. I want to wait until we have better data to support the investment in a patent. The patent on the grand idea at the very beginning of a startup's journey it's a waste of time almost every time. And why? Because the startup's going to pivot. The startup is going to, the startup's going to run into problems in manufacturing. They're going to figure out their marketing message. They're going to pivot from one persona of a customer to another, and on and on and on. And they're going to develop and learn as things go on. That first patent is, everything we know at a period of time. And at the beginning of that startup's journey, we basically know nothing. I will much rather wait until a startup goes through that process, figures out works out the prototyping in problems, works out the manufacturing issues, but most importantly, works out the messaging and the client or customer pain point that they're actually addressing. I mean, how many times have we seen a product go to market that the inventor, the entrepreneur, thought it was going to be used one way, and turns out that everybody uses it upside down in some other way. And, I didn't even think about that. But let's start marketing it that way. From an investor who finances patents, I'm more than willing to sit around and wait. The good patents are the patents that come later, not earlier. There's very, very few scenarios. And what I'm trying to say is none, for all practical purposes, where a startup company should just forget about the patents, figure out the product, and we'll get patents for an incremental improvement. That improvement that, really made that opened up a different set of customers. That one improvement, I want a patent on that thing. I don't need a patent on the overarching grand idea. One, they're difficult to get, they're difficult to enforce, and they're usually loaded with so many problems from badly written, and the problems of the provisional leak into the non-provisional. They're usually terrible patents. My general advice is to wait. Skip the provisional, skip that first patent, wait until you can really justify a patent from the business sense. And if you can't justify it, don't do it. Spend the money where it needs to be, which is, generating revenue. So anyway, a few thoughts about provisional patent applications, and feel free to ping me or yell at me about any of those. Thanks for listening. Well, thanks for listening. I'm Russ Krajak, CEO of Blue Iron IP. We're a patent finance company where we'll make 50 to 100K investments in startup companies to get them decent patent portfolios. And then we'll do loans against patents at $2 to $5 million for later stage companies that have some revenue. You can find me at blueironip.com. You can pick up my book, Investing in Patents, available on Amazon. We're always looking for new deals to finance and syndication partners with angel or venture firms. And please feel free to get in touch with me. And I look forward to chatting with you.